Well, if we'll all rise, we'll observe a moment of silence, and I'd like to mention two things as we observe our moment of silence. Number one, the funeral for Herb James was today in Highlands. For those of you that don't know Herb, Herb was the town manager for the town of Highlands for 32 years, and I believe after that he was a Highlands Town Commissioner for 16 years. So, please keep his family in your prayers. And second, it's obvious what today is. 17 years ago, our country was changed forever. This tragedy will always be remembered in our hearts, and so we observe the special day and all that it represents. We honor the value of life, our country's resilience, and the great American spirit. So with that, let's observe a moment of silence. I'll ask Commissioner Bill to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
We do not have any public hearing this evening. Next up is our public comment period. First up is Mr. Howell Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs, welcome again.
Thank you so much for getting my cheat sheet out here. First of all, I'd like to thank you for letting me speak, and I'd like to thank all that came to Nantahala a while back and to our little meeting over there at our little double-wide trailer. But we thank you for that, and there's a lot of questions asked, and we got a lot of answers, and I really learned a lot at that meeting. And Mr. Gillespie here, I talked to him for a pretty good while, and he really informed me on quite a bit of stuff, and Ronnie Bill there, and like I say, we learned a lot, and we also learned that Mr. Bill's got a big appetite like me. It was pretty good. But anyway, we learned a lot about the fire department, about the money situation there, and the recycle center, and how things work, and how slow things can be through the government. And I learned that, and I want to apologize tonight for the past. I came over here spouting my mouth off about a lot of stuff, and I really didn't know how things worked, and I want you to accept my apology for that. Saying that, I'm still want to remind you about we need a community building over there really bad, and our recycle center, it really still needs some upgrading over there. I think Ron said that Jen's going to stop and look at it. You can see what I'm talking about, right? So, and I know that that might take a while, but we want to see that. And you guys are a whole lot smarter than me and know how to get things done, and you can get things done. And I would just like to remind us that please really help us out over there with some things that we need. And like again, I do thank y'all for coming over the other day, and like I say, I learned a lot. And thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
All right. Mr. Jacobs, just want to say that's mighty sprite and heads up of you. We appreciate that, and I can assure you that each of us have heard y'all loud and clear. It's on our minds, and we've been doing a good bit of research on it. And again, you mentioned something that's probably my biggest frustration when I first became a commissioner, and that was how slow some things in government work. But I think there's a reason for that our forefathers saw before us to make sure we make wise and correct decisions. But we hear you, and we are working on it.
That's my problem. I don't always make wise and correct decisions.
I don't either. I don't either. Thank you. Barbara McCrae, Women's History Trail. Welcome, Barbara.
Good evening, and thank you all for having me tonight. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate everything you do for the county. I've learned from being on the town council some of what's involved in this type of government work, and I know you work really, really hard on our behalf, and I appreciate it. Tonight I'm here to represent the Women's History Trail. This is just a little information piece. I just ran off about 6 copies, but it just shows you something about public sculpture in the United States and how little represented women have been historically, and even at present there are more figures like Gumby and inanimate objects and animals put up as public sculptures than of women. But that is just for your information. I just thought that was kind of interesting. I think it was from the National Geographic. The Women's History Trail is a project of the Folk Heritage Association of Macon County, and I know you're familiar with that organization and all the good that they do and how hard they work and how many fine people are really dedicated in that organization to getting things done. We're lucky that they're sponsoring us. Our purpose is to build a trail starting in downtown Franklin, but eventually it could reach all parts of Macon County, because the purpose of the trail is to celebrate the lives of the women of Macon County and what they contributed to creating the society that we have today. We're going to open the first phase of the trail on October 27th, and you all are invited to attend if you can. We'll start with 8 sites that have association with certain women or groups of women or a single woman. Some of those were associated with the county, such as the social workers who were crammed in little offices in the Corbin building for quite a long time, 5 of them running the whole social service department in Macon County. An important part of the trail will be public art. And we probably should have started with something small that we could get done quickly and cheaply, but we fell in love with the story of 3 women of the pioneer era. One was Cherokee, one was African American, and one white, whose lives were intersected, whose lives were all associated to some degree with the Indian mound, Niquosi mound. And they were just very strong women. The Cherokee woman actually sued the U.S. government after she was forced off her reservation. Her home was burned down by General Thomas Love's son, and they had to leave, and then they lost their land, and she sued the government. So, I mean, that's the kind of feisty person that we're talking about here. She won the case, actually, and the African woman was a slave of hers who was sold to Jesse Seiler, and the third woman in the threesome is Thomasina Seiler, who was a daughter of Jesse. So I can tell you the whole story someday when you have time. I know you don't have time tonight to hear all this, but it's really a fascinating story, and it really mesmerizes everyone who hears it. And we see it really as representing 3 matriarchal figures in Macon County's history, and a way of bringing public attention to the work that these women did throughout history, and their goodness, their wisdom, and the efforts that they made to survive the often tragic circumstances of their lives. The piece will be located near the river, near the Indian Mound, and you know there's a lot of renewal going on there thanks to Mainspring. The Cherokees have purchased a building near the mound. The land is being reclaimed from brown fields, and this sculpture will go there facing the mound, and someday I'm dreaming that there will be a beautiful plaza there, and that will really transform the face of Franklin and really bring a powerful message to everyone who comes to Macon County. I think it would really be great for tourism, for our children, for many, 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 many things. Already in this overall project, we have the town, the county, the Cherokee, Mainspring, Mountain Partners, the Niquosi Initiative, the Women's History Trail now. We're all working in this same big project. The Women's History Trail has engaged Wesley Wofford, and I don't know, Mr. Tate, if you know him. He's a sculptor living in Cashiers, fantastic sculptor,
I'm
and he was
familiar.
able to help us with this project. He's finished the design maquette. We had it at a meeting recently, and I was standing there watching everyone who came in the room one by one. They were just, it was a small room, and people would go in and look at it, and every single one of them said, "Oh, wow!" And they just were just blown away by the power of this piece that he's designed. The final piece will be full-size figures, which means 7 feet tall, because if you have a smaller human-sized person, it looks like a little teeny person when you have it on, when it's a public sculpture. And I had to go and look at a few to convince myself of that, but it really is true. And if you're looking around at pieces, sometimes you'll see a piece that's like maybe this big, and it would actually look pretty good if you were in a room with it, maybe, but it's standing outside. Looks like a midget. It's a strange thing. This is going to it's going to be a long-term project, like 2 to 2.5 years, just because of the technical processes involved, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and we realize that. So right now we're trying to raise money. And what I'm asking you all to do is to authorize County Manager Derek Rowland to write a letter of support for us. We are applying for a Z. Smith Reynolds grant that has just been announced. It's a new grant that they are offering for inclusive public sculpture. And it sounds like it was written just for us, because they want to support public art that represents underrepresented factions of the population, such as minorities and women who don't appear often in public art. And it has to tell a local story. I mean, we hit all the key points of this grant. So that's all we're asking tonight, is if you would allow that. It's a $50,000 grant. It would really be a tremendous help to us if we could get that. And I think we have a good chance. Nothing is certain, but we're going to go for
Sounds
it.
good.
That-
Can we get a
that's
motion to that effect?
So moved.
We got a motion from Commissioner Higgins, a second by Commissioner Bill. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, thank you very,
Robert.
very much. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your work
Now,
on it.
where does the trail start, Barbara? You didn't.
Well, it's going to, what we have now will just be in town. We're starting with 8 sites in town, from the town hall to the Franklin Terrace.
Okay.
And then, but eventually, like, it'll go
Yeah.
to the river and then to Race Chapel, which we're hoping that the town can acquire very soon. And eventually, who knows, maybe all the way to Highlands, who knows? But,
Mr. McCray,
Yeah.
are you involved in the September 22nd?
yes, I am.
Can you elaborate on that? That's probably where I saw your name.
Okay. Yes, all these things are all intertwined. September 22nd, Mountain Partners and Nikwasi Initiative is dedicating the very first kiosk that we are creating. I say we because I'm on that board too. The kiosk, they're large, beautiful information kiosks. One will go at Nikwasi Mound. One is going at Cowie, across the river from the mound and the town site, and it tells the story so people can see and understand what they're looking at and how it might have looked back, 200 years, 1,000 years ago. But it will be on display at the Cowie School on
September 22nd.
that's a Saturday, September 22nd.
9:30.
You all should have gotten an invitation in your mailbox, or you will soon. 9:30, they're having a breakfast for the invitees, so please come. And I think you'll be very, very impressed. They've gotten some tremendous graphic artists to do this, and
Several elders have signed up to be there, and the chief will be there.
the chief will be there. Yes, there's going to be a significant delegation from Cherokee. And the last time that they were over here, we had a little event at the Nikwasi Mound. It was just wonderful. I mean, it was so much fun to interact and to get to know them a little better. And they were, it's just been a very positive experience to have the two cultures sort of taking this on together. So, okay, thank you
Thanks,
all
Robin.
very much.
All right. Our next individual up, you have to excuse me, but I can't read it. It's Fixing Potholes on Silver Spruce Lane.
Yes,
Can you
sure.
pronounce your name for me?
It's Brigitta Canto.
Brigitta.
It's Birgitta.
Okay.
Last name is Kando.
Very good.
And I'm here on behalf
Welcome.
of, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. And I'm here on behalf of, we have little over 20 residents on Silver Spruce Lane, and we're all Macon County taxpayers.
Silver, I'm sorry.
Silver Spruce Lane, it's right up where Wide Horizon goes, and then Silver.
Is it a state maintained road?
I don't know.
Nobody maintains it right now.
Yeah, nobody's
maintaining
Nobody's There's no maintenance.
If it's not a state, the county does not do roads.
County doesn't do roads. Okay, who would?
You contact the DOT, we can certainly give you that information if it's a state maintained road. If it's not, it's a private.
Warren, do you know offhand who?
It's not on the state list that I'm aware of.
It would be a private road.
It's the loop road right there in the curve at the top of the hill there at the fairgrounds, right across from where you're trying to go over Billy Van.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the fairgrounds are here, and
Yeah.
then Wide Horizon goes like this, and then Silver Spruce Lane goes up. So it's a private road.
Yeah.
So, I guess.
Do you have a homeowners association?
No. No HOA.
Restrictive covenants for the subdivision that might impose some road maintenance obligations. Have you checked your deed?
Okay. So it would be on the deed.
Typically, or a reference to restrictive
Okay.
covenants that might be found in a separate document.
Okay.
How many homes is that?
There's over 20.
I would say there's a fairly good chance that somewhere there's some restrictive covenants and possibly a road maintenance agreement
Okay.
somewhere. Fairly good chance of that if there's 20 homes.
Yeah, there's over. So I'll look into that road
Who's
maintenance.
the road maintenance agreement with?
It would be among homeowners and possibly the developer if the developer's still
Is it a
involved.
paved road or gravel road?
It's a paved road going up, and then on the other side, it's gravel coming down. And, you know, our,
Like a loop?
yeah, it loops kind of around. And our
I know where you
concern
are.
that the potholes are so bad that even, you know, if emergency vehicles like ambulance has to come up and, you know, in a serious situation, the way the potholes are, so it's becoming, I think, a public health concern. So I have to look into that, okay? Well, thank you so much. And I know I didn't put it on the list, but is there a leash law in Macon County for dogs?
Within the town of Franklin, there is.
Yeah,
Inside the city.
in the side of the city. But what if,
Bonds.
yeah, I have to check, but what if we're not in the city?
No,
There's no leash law? Okay, that's nothing, because we have like 3 dogs that are running loose and they're
You contacted animal control?
animal control, because it's a nuisance, and I'm afraid they
Macon
chase
County
the
Health
cars.
Department.
Okay. So Macon County Health Department.
Mr. Rutler can give you that personal number.
Give me information. Thank you. Oh, I'm learning so much. Thank you. All right. So, and then how about nuisance? Is there any, like
It is a
after?
nuisance law.
Yeah, because there's like 2 dogs. They just bark starting like at 9 o'clock all into the morning. I have recordings. It's like my parents, they're hardly able to sleep, and I'm starting to lose sleep.
The nuisance law probably don't cover other dogs in a pen.
Covers
They're
loud music.
outside. But I mean, it's loud, so like it's a nuisance. So do you have to distinguish it?
I think the way it's worded is loud music. I think the nuisance ordinance may expressly exclude
It does.
dogs.
Wow. I mean, I love
The
dogs,
state of
but
North
that's
Carolina, I mean, part of that is the state law on the hunting dogs, you know, about keeping them up, keeping them under a pen if the dogs are keeping in a safe place
Mhm.
and being taken care of.
okay.
There's no,
Nothing
I don't
about.
think we could even pass that law if we wanted to.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, thank you so much for all the information.
Good luck on your roads.
What about your potholes?
So I'm gonna review the restricted deed covenants to see if there's any type of road maintenance agreement. So I guess that's my first step.
And you might, when you closed on your transaction, if you
Mhm.
had title insurance issued, it should give you a reference to all
Okay.
of those restrictive covenants and might give you a jump start to finding what you need to look at.
Yeah, I'm sure we had. Did we have title insurance? I'm sure there is, especially if there's a mortgage, so.
If there was a mortgage, there would be.
Exactly, yes, so.
Did you just buy the property recently, or?
No, about 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so. And we love living here. It's great,
Thank
great
you, Ms.
town.
We can do more.
Yes, so
Right.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next on the list, I have Bill and Kay Thomas. I think you're already on our agenda, though.
Yeah.
Did you have something else you wanted to address the board about, or just your floodplain ordinance?
Yes, I can.
No, you're on the agenda.
Okay, I didn't know if there was another topic you wanted to address. On. Okay, not a problem. Anyone else would like to address the board? No one else? All right, let's move on. Additions to the agenda or changes?
Mr. Chairman, if we
Anything?
could, 9B, if we could do just a quick update on airport contract.
Okay. We'll add that as item 9B. Anything else, Mr. Manager?
No, sir.
Quiet night.
Mr. Chairman, I would request a short closed section with, we anticipate no action being taken. I've informed the county attorney concerning, discussion of property.
Okay.
It'd be possible acquisition of property.
No. Discussion of some property. There'll be no acquisition. No acquisition.
Probably need to speak with you before going into closed session to make sure that we can go into closed session for that purpose. The real property.
It would be acquisition, wouldn't it, Mr. Mayor?
The real property.
It would be acquisition.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's limited to acquisition.
Well,
so.
we call it acquisition, yeah.
All right. Anything else? If not, we'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. All right. Reports and presentations. A, Nantahala Community Library. Mr. Ed Trask. Welcome, Ed.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Appreciate your time.
Sure. Appreciate your efforts.
First of all, I want to thank Hal for his efforts in bringing Nantahala to the forefront.
Got a few handouts.
Yes. I believe the first page is the summary of actions. Back in February, we had a community meeting over in Nantahala. Mr. Higdon was kind enough to come over and meet with us. We formed a committee to look at possible sites for a new building. And it says possibility of sharing a building with the library. Their recommendation was to build a building on the Duke property. We call it the Rec Center. It is owned by Duke, and there's a 99-year lease with, I believe, 30 some odd years remaining. Then in March, the library board and staff met to review strategies to gather further input from all of the people in Nantahala regarding what their wants and needs were, regarding a new building for library/community facility. And the purpose of the input from these various surveys from these various groups and people was to acknowledge the recent activity initiated by Howell and others in the community club for a new facility. Providing the participants with information regarding library services that are currently available, including services available through the Fontana Regional Library, and the long-range plan focus of these. We wanted to gather information from a broad segment of the community to get their input regarding services that the library and community club could have available. As we know, services shape the space. With input from the community, we could better garner what future plans would be for various services and so on. We wanted to gather information from a broad segment of the community about also the most convenient location for library building, and establish the level of interest in partnering with the community club. Mr. Higdon requested a building for Nantahala Community Club and Library be included as a high priority in the county's capital facilities plan. And we thank you, Mr. Higdon, for that. Library Board supported the strategies suggested for gathering input, including focus groups, community input sessions, surveys, and interviews with stakeholders. In May also, the focus group was held with the teachers and school personnel at the Nantahala School. We also held a focus group with the community club members to gain input from them, and in July, a community input session was held at Nantahala Library. Phone interviews were held with Chris Baldwin, Macon County Superintendent, and Melissa Evans, school board member representing Nantahala. I also spoke with Melissa face-to-face to get her input. In August, the focus group was held with the volunteer firefighters, again, to try to include every segment of Nantahala that we could think of and get as much information as we could. August into September, we've also had a survey conducted online, and it is still online, as well as paper copies, as well as we've had surveys at the library and the community club in the library. The community club meeting to share findings on the focus groups, the input sessions and surveys. The library is seeking the club's support, and we had a meeting last night with the community club, and there's a couple representatives, Howell and Tom Oswald, who's the president of the community club, and we have support a unified effort to approach the commissioners regarding the input, the information that we have gathered, and reporting on the process and findings of the September County Commissioner meeting. We would request that the County Commission include a new community library facility with the as the other libraries in the organization contain a community room, community space for community clubs, as well as a multitude of other uses and needs. As you can see by the attached information, and we did not go to the focus groups with suggestions or options. All of the input that you see here is strictly independently offered by the people in Nantahala and the various focus groups. As you can see, the three most important things when you use the library: classes and events for adults, exercise, arts and music, and nature, and that includes the summer programs for the youth in the community. Wi-Fi, high-speed internet was the second most popular, and checking out books, naturally, library. And then if you flip over to the next page, three other library or community services you'd like to see offered close to you. A bigger, nicer place for family reunions and birthday parties. Those of you familiar with Nantahala know that we are very limited as far as spaces to hold such functions, and we have some family reunions that are quite extensive. Community involvement activities such as job fairs and so on, something for everybody. And more bandwidth, more reliable high-speed internet. That was another important item. And choose one place where you would like to see the library located. And again, we did not offer any options or suggestions. This is strictly input from the people. The most popular was around the White Oak area. That's a central location in Nantahala. There are positives and negatives to all of these. The second most popular was the existing location right next to the school. And the third most popular was around Woya Road. Well, Woya Road runs the whole length of Nantahala. And you can see down the bottom of that page various comments that people gave along with their suggestions regarding locations. So what we are looking at and asking the county commissioners to do is to include the library / community room facility in a space needs study, a capital facilities plan, whatever you want to refer to it as. And that's basically bottom line. Any questions?
Did you discuss any sizes yet? Or
No.
size of space?
We wanted to gain the information from the community as to what their wants and needs were first, and then
Program.
right, and then go from there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions?
Well, Karen and I went down the White Oak Flats Road and thought we had something cooking at one time, but the problem with that is not only the water and the sewer, that's number one, but the property.
Right.
And the place that we chose had a little water problem to start with, not good water, but bad water.
Mm-hmm.
And so finding a location is really tough in Nantahala, as you know. We worked on it pretty hard. So I really think that, you know, how the community feels and right there at the existing location, we've looked at it pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
And there are ways to make it secure. And we've had that discussion too, and we've had it with Superintendent Baldwin and the county manager. I'm sure Paul's looked at it. And there are ways you could do that.
Right.
And there are some room there.
Mm-hmm.
You might have to build a little unique building. It'd have to be, you know, long and maybe not as wide.
Mhm.
There are some room above where that building is now. That line extends some retaining wall work, but that'd still be cheaper. And I think me and Karen, even when we looked at it, you know, the problem, you know, there is a security risk, but with the new locks that they're putting on and some things that I'm, you know, just a lot of us talking that would be it just makes sense for a lot of reasons. So, and I hope it is included. And I think of course it's up to the board, but you know, when I was liaison to the library, we looked at it a lot. And it's a needy thing. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Is this a combination, you got a library and a community center in one building?
Yes, sir. And all of the libraries in the Fontana system have a community room available for the community for whatever all of these suggestions that people have said that they would like.
Do you have the space there, Mr. Field, there where these trailers are at the back of the school?
Yeah, you'd burn out number one and clean it up and fix that. You could fix that property. There's some property to be fixed right there. It would take some, you know, I think you have to put a retaining wall around it and fix it. That's what Karen and I looked at a long time ago. We had a lady, I forget her name, at the White Oak that was going to help us, and that sort of fell through. And but then the other property we looked at, we can't, if the county gets involved, we can't, as Paul can tell you, there's some special provision for water and sewer.
Sure.
And to babysit that for a long, long time. So we're planning on enhancing that sewer system at Nantahala School sooner or later anyway. It's going to have to be. And so we have that in place. Got good water there. And it's being tested. So that's already being taken care of. So a lot of that just makes economic wise and what it says in here, I think I read, the accessibility to the folks and it's well lit, accessible. I think if we can get over the hump of the school security, and I think we can work that out. Me and Mr. Shields have talked about that with Dr. Baldwin and with Paul, and if Paul, we all get our heads together, I think that can be worked out.
That'd be super. That'd be super.
The key thing, I didn't call any meetings or deserve any credit. You know, I was approached by members of the community to come over and talk to them about it and just look at it, because I'd heard Karen for years talk about leaking roofs. It's a shame it's gone this far, but we let roofs leak for 10 or 12 years before we address it. But anyway, the thing that, and I stressed over there is if Nantahala community comes together, there's two items: a community exit, community building, and the library. Two critical needs in Nantahala community, both well deserved and long past due. I think it's more appropriate if the community, and I'm glad I heard you say that you had met with the community club. I know I've spent a lot of time, or Hal and Randy, they're the ones that got me interested and got it rolling.
Right.
And as long as a community, I don't think we ought to say, hey, you guys, this is what Nantahala needs. You know, we're over there, once a month or once every 2 months, or election time, maybe every week. But I'm glad to hear that, and I'm hoping that there's some congenial understanding that y'all want to work as a community and not library versus community building.
Exactly.
Or community club. Put it together, and I think the appropriate way for me individually, I'm not speaking for the full board, is once you all bring it to us, and we've got a plan on record that was presented at one time and discussed in meetings. So, you know, once you get it worked out, it's obviously those two things need to be addressed. It needs to be high priority. As I stated when I come over there, and Hal's stressing that government moves slow, but at least we're talking about it and we're trying to get a plan together, and funding hopefully is going to be one of the top items when we approve this capital improvement plan around January. So thank you for your effort. Thank you, Karen, Hal, and Randy Shook, and all the community members. We've all identified the need. Let's get together and make it happen. And all of these issues, sewer, water, the broadband stuff is tough. We've got to have that. So all of these issues, we can work them out. And certainly I appreciate your time as a member of the library board, and certainly appreciate Hal and Randy and Karen. Everybody's working on this thing. Thank you all a bunch.
I'm
Speak
also,
loud.
I'm also a resident of Nantahala and involved with the community club as well. We have the president here of the community club, so at our meeting last night, I think we think of one accord. So,
Just about anything you get's gonna be better than what you got.
amen.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
your Time coming over the hill. All right, item 9B, airport contract. Commissioner Gillespie.
Just a quick update, Airport Authority negotiated, let me back up. There's been a FBO, contract in place, I believe I'm correct, for the past 20 years. That is due to expire the last day of September. The Airport Authority has negotiated a new contract with a new provider. That contract has been signed and they will be taking over October 1st. Airport Authority feels very strongly that this new contract is going to be much better for the citizens of Macon County. We'll be able to provide some additional services at the airport. And we're hoping that will come to fruition, but it does look very good. Look very pleased.
Good, thank you. Any questions? All right, moving right along. Old business, item A, class action matter regarding PILT or payment in lieu of taxes. Mr. Attorney.
Gentlemen, as you know, there are a number of counties throughout the United States that contain a large amount of federal lands. We happen to be one of those counties. The counties that are in that situation are not able to tax the federal government on those lands for ad valorem tax purposes. However, the federal government recognized that that caused problems to some counties, and so they enacted some legislation called PILT, or payment in lieu of taxes. Basically what it does is it pays some money from the federal government to the counties that have these federal lands to try to help those counties along a little bit. This class action lawsuit was filed, it's entitled Kane County, Utah versus the United States. Basically what's been determined is that for the years 2015, 16, and 17, the PILT payments were not fully made by the federal government, and there's a class action lawsuit to see to it that those payments are fully made. Macon County was identified as one of the counties which had not received full payment of PILT monies. It appears that there was roughly $13,600 and change dollars that should have been paid to the county that wasn't paid. The law firm of Smith Curry is pursuing that class action and is pursuing the payment of those taxes. They have asked whether or not Macon County wants to opt in order to recover that money. They basically are charging a 1/3 contingency fee for their work. If you don't opt in, you're not going to receive payment unless you hire somebody to pursue it. And in all likelihood, it's going to cost more than that 1/3 that they are seeking. So if the county is inclined to pursue the recovery of those PILT payments that they should have received in any event, it would be my advice that you consider opting into this class action.
Will it cost us anything if we don't win the suit?
No.
What is your recommendation?
My recommendation is it's an additional sum of revenue. It's not a tremendous sum of revenue, but it is an additional sum of revenue, and basically it'll be very easy to opt in. If you're inclined to do so, you would just need to authorize me to let them know that you desire to opt in.
You have to pay the 1/3 up front.
No. There'll be no recovery there'll be no payment unless they recover.
And this is a long way down the road. Apparently, because Utah, we talked about in Hickory, had a big long meeting in Hickory. This is not going to happen. These are going after millions of dollars. It's billions of dollars. It's millions and millions of dollars.
There are some counties that are going to receive as much as $130,000.
But this year we were fully funded, and it did I mean, we work very hard on Peel. A lot of us on this table have for a long time, and only thing I think we need to be careful of, if you opt in, and your name's on this lawsuit, we don't know where it's gonna end. That was a conversation that was had in Hickory. A lot of the counties, you know, there's about 14 counties in West North Carolina. Swain County being the biggest, by far. I don't know what their stance is. Nobody was there from Swain County. I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that there's no big rush here.
Actually, there is. If you're gonna opt in, you've gotta opt in by Friday.
Who told you that? The lawyer,
No, the paperwork from the federal court.
but the lawyer,
No, the federal court judge.
but the lawyers that bring the suit to the court.
No, this was an order issued by the federal court that set that deadline.
Thoughts? Mike? You need a
Maybe-
motion or?
Maybe a strategy of not to opt in. Make it so quick that you can't get your ducks in a row.
Now, this has been pending and out there since probably about June or July. So it's not been.
It's not new.
No, it's not new.
The thing about the PILT payments is that if we did not have federal land in Macon County, we'd be in another wide spot in the road somewhere. And I understand the value. I think Laura and I were discussing $300,000, $340,000, $350,000 a year is our PILT payment. That's taking tax dollars out of your left-hand pocket and put them into your right-hand pocket. It's federal tax dollars. So, $350,000. What is the value of 50% of public land in Macon County? What kind of attraction? What kind of a tourist attraction? Economic benefits from it? Yeah, it would be nice to have it $300,000 in our budget, but in the long run, without that public land in Macon County, we'd be a whole different county. So I don't think it's a great big issue if we lose the PILT payment. In my personal opinion, we've lost that $350,000 of tax dollars that we would get, but it's still tax money. It's somebody's paying it. So it's not like we're in impoverished county with 20-something million sitting in a fund balance. So to me, I'd say let it go, and if they stop the PILT, all the better.
But does the school receive the PILT money?
These are CSRS money.
SRS.
Ron, you don't mind, talk a little bit more about what you're concerned with.
Well,
George.
the counties in the west, you know, Swain County leads it by far. They're about 86% federal,
Right.
and they'll take a whole different view than what Paul just said. I'll guarantee you.
Yeah.
And we're 51%. So if that was in the private sector, and we should like to tax it, but on the PILT part, a lot of these counties have decided that since we are fully funded this time, right, Roy? Yeah, you got fully funded for the first time, and that was coming out of the recession. And if you go back, we were fully funded. We've even got more money than that at one time. And so I think a lot of the counties that we talked to, they were not opting into the lawsuit simply because they didn't want their county listed under that suit, being part of that suit, because they think it could come back and bite you later on down the road. I don't know that. Because PILT, it's the West that drives PILT. It's those big state, the Utahs, and that's who drives PILT. I mean, you look at us, and we're just a little glimmer. But you go to those western states, and they're like Utah, the whole state. And there's very few counties in North Carolina that even has that. So that was one of the concerns. The second concern is, especially these counties that have a lot, and we're right up there with them. Is this the right number? We don't know. Is it 13,000? Is it a whole lot more than that? A lot less than that? There's no really way to tell. You go
I
by.
think they've actually adjudicated these numbers at this time. There's been some agreements made by the respective parties after accountings and whatnot, and these apparently are pretty much agreed numbers by the parties, I understand.
looks like a positive case, it really does, in front of the courts.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question there's gonna be a verdict in favor of the counties.
Yeah. Now, if they get paid off that, and when they get paid is a different question. You can get a positive, you can come back as a positive, but getting the check, that's the people in Swain County. So I don't have no one way or the other, just some discussions we've had. I don't have no qualms one way or the other. It gives us, if we get 13 grand out of it,
It'll be 13 grand less a third, and there's probably gonna be about a 1% expense.
so we
as
end
well.
up with, yeah.
20%.
It's not gonna be a tremendous sum of money, but there's, you know, always that one way of looking every little bit helps. So,
Is the purpose greater than the money? Is the purpose greater than the money?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean
I'm
by
not
the
sure I
purpose.
understand what I'm asking.
It's gonna be an interesting discussion.
Sometimes the going ahead with something has a greater purpose than the money of it, in this situation, money of it.
Or it could work the other way too.
Yeah.
I would be, I guess, more concerned about the point that Ronnie articulated, except for the fact that I understand the federal government has basically stipulated to these numbers. In other words, they have essentially indicated, yeah, there are underpayments. I mean, if they were taking a position, no, there haven't been underpayments, I'd be a little more worried about those things, I guess.
Right. So everybody's agreed on their amount. Everybody agrees that payments were not made, but you're still gonna sue them to get.
Well, the
I'm
suit
very
is what
keen.
brought
I'm
you to
very
this
close.
point.
We're due the money.
Yeah.
There's no question.
I
We're due more
think-
money than that.
And I think the federal government has basically agreed that we're due some money.
Yeah.
So,
So I don't have no qualm with something
I
like
don't,
that.
I don't see any problem with it at all.
I don't either.
Personally, I think it kind of puts a briar in it and says that, hey, these monies are important to us. It's important that you pay it. So I don't have a problem with it.
That was my argument down there, again, for rural counties. $300-something thousand a year don't mean a whole lot to some of these, these out in Utah and Nebraska and some of them places, but $300-something thousand to us, and the SRS money's been completely cut off. So,
Now go back to that statement you just said, the SRS money is.
school resource,
No, but is it completely cut out?
yeah.
When did that happen?
We ain't got it for 2 years.
No, we got it last year. We
Yeah.
actually got a second payment, which made us
Yeah,
whole in sorts.
in sorts.
Yeah.
But it's something.
That's from the law.
Which surprised me that we got that second payment for last fiscal year.
Chester, you don't feel like joining this would jeopardize any of the payments that will currently receive?
I don't think so. I would be concerned, again, if the federal government was saying, no, wait a minute, we don't owe you this. But if they've sat down and stipulated that these sums are owed, I would be very surprised if they came back and said, now we're gonna hold this against you, even though we stipulated that it's owed.
All right.
But if we're owed it, let's try to collect it. It's due, it's
Yes,
our
we need a
money.
motion or a consensus, or what do you?
I think what we would need is a motion to opt in, and if you desire to opt in, to authorize me or Derek or the chairman to go online and do the necessary opt-in.
Well, I'll make a
paperwork.
motion, we opt in to collect our bill payment due to the county and give the county attorney and the county manager authorization to pursue it. And there's no expense to our county.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 4 to 1. Mr. Chuck. Thank you, Chester.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to new business. Discussion regarding fire study recommendations. Emergency Services Director, Mr. Warren Cade. Welcome, Warren.
I actually have a fairly easy discussion tonight. I don't need any money, and I don't want any kind of decision tonight. So all I got to do is give you some stuff to think about. A little background on what I'm going to talk about tonight, and you all are well aware of this, but sometimes the public is not necessarily aware that out of the 11 fire departments that we have, 2 of those are municipalities, of course, but 9 of those are nonprofit organizations. And as such, you know, those organizations are all contracted to Macon County to provide a service, just as we would building contractor, grading contractor, et cetera. However, the service they provide is essentially fire protection. And one of the things that we recognized in the fire study we did in 2017 was there was a section of their contract that's been in place for several years that we needed some clarification on. And I will read you the quote out of the contract, and I think you've got copies of this in your agenda packet. It's under Section B of their contract, and it says, quote, any expenditure that establishes a new operating expense that will extend beyond the current fiscal year shall require the concurrence of the Macon County Fire Marshal's Office, end quote. Essentially, and I understand the intent of how this was written into the contract. Occasionally, either our office or Derek's office or the county in general will get some request from a financial institution when a department's buying a truck or something, and they'll want to know, you know, are they in good standing? What kind of money do you think they're going to get this year? What can you tell us? Have they been inspected? Basically, what we would like to see, and for something for you to think about, and this is something we can come back, you know, a couple months down the road after you think about some options, is we would like to know what would you like that quote concurrence to apply to, and also how would you like for us to define concurrence? What do you want to see from these folks? And there's a lot of options for that. And Lori and I have talked about some of the financial analyzation of these things. You may want to strike it completely. You may want to look at it and say, okay, we've looked at other things. We can take that out. I know that the intent was when it was put in there, it was to cover big expenditures. It was, you know, the $200,000 fire truck. It was never intended to cover the 2-year internet subscription that extends beyond 12 years. You don't want to have to do that. For the most part, what these departments do is in your normal budget process, they'll put a narrative in there and say, okay, we're doing this year, or the line items in the budget will cover expenditures for certain things, and we approve it that way. But we just need a little clarification on where you want to go with that and how you want to deal with that in the future. You know, maybe you want that to apply to purchases over $30,000, over $50,000, maybe the formal bid threshold of $90,000. One of the things we looked at, and you've got a really good financial analyst over here, and you've got a semi-adequate one here, but we are not, we discussed it, and we don't normally deal with the analyzation of financial transactions such as commercial lending, which is basically what this would be on a routine basis. And I actually talked to one of the larger institutions to see what they look at when they lend to nonprofits. And they look at, you know, they're going to look at their cash flow coverage ratios. They're going to see if they've got enough cash coming in to cover the debt. They're going to look at debt to asset ratios. They're going to look at, you know, they're going to look at their net income statement to see what kind of money's there for them. So it may be that if you get a request and these folks have went through a reputable lending institution for whatever dollar figure you're looking for, you know, there's not much more that we could probably do that these folks haven't already done, particularly if it's a third-party lender, because the third-party lender is only making their money off the payments and the interest that they're getting. Now, if it's a, I guess, quote, second-party lender, for instance, and I'll use them as an example, you know, say Ford Motor Credit. Maybe you're buying a Ford vehicle through Ford Motor Credit. Okay, those are kind of the same. They're different, but they're kind of the same. So Ford's making money off the sale, so, you know, maybe they're more inclined to make a loan to you than a third-party lender would be. So maybe you want that to extend to all lenders that are reputable. Maybe you want it to extend to the third parties only. maybe there's something else that you want us to look at, and you may not even look at any of it. But we want to make sure that, particularly since this is in our contract, and we've danced around it for a while, but we really need to clarify what that is and what you all want to see, so that we make it very clear to the folks that are submitting us information, so they know what to get for us, and that we know what to expect from them when they provide it for us. One of the things that we actually thought about, and this goes back to one of the other recommendations in the study, as far as audits. Obviously, the two municipalities, they have audits done annually. But there is some public law or general statutes in North Carolina, it's 159.4, that nonprofits that receive more than $1,000 of public funds are required to submit an audit. However, when you read the fine print, when you get into the lawyer stuff at the bottom, there's a long list of folks that are excluded, and volunteer fire departments are excluded. Now, we can't require it. They can offer it to us. We can work out a deal and they can give it to us, and that's the other lawyer thing. It just says we can't require it. Doesn't mean we can't get it. Maybe we say that, if you provide us an audit every year, every 3 years, every 5 years, whatever you want to come up with, and it's positive, it's good, maybe that meets your concurrence. So if you give us a letter from Linden Institution, you're good. Maybe you're happy with the way we're doing it now. But we just felt like that there wasn't a really good definition in there on what that concurrence was. And we just want you to think about some things that might provide a little clarity, not just to us, but to your fire departments, to make sure that they understand what we're looking for, and to make sure that we help them in any way we can, so that they're financially able to do what they need to do. And again, this is not, we're not bringing this to you, and we made it very clear when we did the study, this is not because we think we have any issues financially with any of them. As of the moment, they are all doing very well financially. We've gotten better records in the last couple of years than we've had in a long time. But we're on the uphill track with it, and we're making some positive progress, and we don't want that to fall behind somewhere. So basically tonight, I just want to give you some stuff to think about. Depending on the changes that we make, would probably require a contractual revision. So obviously that's not going to happen overnight. So anything that we would discuss sometime in the next several months would require time for us to negotiate all that contractual obligation stuff out and get a new contract ready to go, or to make the definition in there of what we actually expect out of some of these things. So this is not something that we expect to happen overnight or tomorrow. This is something for the long term that we need to be thinking about now, before we have an issue come up somewhere down the road and we're not really prepared for it. So basically that's all I want to do tonight, was put that out there for discussion, and I'm open to any questions that y'all might have.
All right, go ahead.
One question. Does most of the fire departments do annual audit?
No, they do not. The only two that I know of that do an annual audit are the municipalities. The others, depending on which department it is, they will do some type of financial review. It could be very short, it can be more lengthy, it depends on the department. So it's probably not consistent across the board what kind of analyzation is done on this.
The fire protection agreements do provide for the county to inspect records when needed to do so.
But that's never happened. And
Actually, I think there has been some
It has.
occasions where it has happened.
We have actually inspected records, and there's no,
but that was triggered by.
usually there's something that triggers the
Yes,
inspection.
yeah, I mean, there's a routine.
Yeah, on us just saying, okay, hey, we're coming to see your financial records or whatever, we don't.
That was a routine procedure.
That's correct.
See, those are all tax dollars.
That's correct.
If we're accountable here, we can ask Lori, anybody can ask us, what have we got in, the general fund, the fund balance, and that's the thing, we're dealing $50 million here, but those fire departments, they're at about, what, 2 million now, $1.5 million?
Yeah, somewhere
About
in
3 million?
Yeah.
About 3.4 million.
3.4 million. tax dollars. That's all tax money. And there needs to be, I've always said there needs to be some account, not that I don't trust people, but what is the reserve funds? And we've never been able, and that's what Chester's alluding to, we've never been able to determine what the reserve funds are. Do they have $10,000 in reserve fund or fund balance, or is it $100,000? We don't know. Taxpayers have the right to know every detail about these fire departments. And I think would make concurrence to me would be, let's just eliminate it. Why are we trying to control some aspect of a nonprofit without knowing the full financial condition of that nonprofit? So I'd say let concurrence just drop that term completely.
You know, and you know, the budgets, as far as the totals, Lori obviously knows the totals, the departmental amounts per year range from somewhere around 150,000 to about the $800,000 range. So you have some folks that have this amount of money, and you have some folks that have this amount of money. So it kind of varies from area to area as far as what the amounts are that we're talking about. And you know, and there's another option that we've looked at as far as the study. You talk about the public funds, and obviously those public funds are distributed with the intent to purchase and acquire equipment and provide those services. You know, if you wanted to eliminate that part of concurrence and take that away, then you may want to look at the clawbacks on the contract, because North Carolina, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chester, nonprofits, they can, if they were to cease providing the service for some reason, they can distribute their assets, but those assets have to be distributed to another nonprofit. They can't just sell them and the board members make a profit. There are certain statutes that guide how they distribute them, but there's nothing that says that they would have to distribute them to the next fire department that took their place, or to the neighboring fire department that was going to cover that service. So we don't think it's going to happen, but you could have an asset that the citizens of a community paid for that essentially would be transferred to the coast somewhere, and your folks in that area would have to start over again with the funding to get those assets back. So you know, you may want to look at it another way and say, okay, we're good with eliminating the concurrence, but we want to know that what you buy, there's some provision that if you were to cease operating, it came back to a third party or something, so it could be distributed to the next person that took the service. So you know, there's a lot of options we can look at. We just need to know how you want to go and which direction you'd like to look for.
Transparency is key. Taxpayer dollars should be completely transparent. There's no reason for any secrecy at any level. Whether it's a fire department, county, you know.
And again, let me reiterate for the record, we don't think there's any financial problem with the ones now. We're very pleased with what we have. We've come a long way in the last 20 some odd years that I've been here. So we're very pleased, and we just want to keep that going in a positive direction.
And there is a fairly there are fairly good contractual provisions for the provision of records, and indeed in connection with budget requests each year.
And we also have to understand,
Production of records,
you know, and it's been said many times up here, and I'll reiterate it, they are one of the best bargains we have as far as the service they provide for us, particularly with the lower insurance ratings and the stuff that they're providing now. So we need to make sure whatever we enter into is something that's mutually agreeable and could work with on both sides of this, so that we can help them get what they need without some undue burden or strain as well.
It's open and fair.
That's correct.
I think, based upon what you said, I agree for the most part of what you said, Paul. I think openness is just a given. Yeah, it just needs to happen.
Tax dollars.
That's why I like the concurrence of the Macon County Fire Marshal's Office. I think is important. Why? I'm just going to throw out an example. I'm going to pick on Kevin here. They've got a ladder truck in Franklin. So those are very expensive trucks, 600,000 plus.
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 Okay, let's just say that, I don't know, Clark's Chapel, they decide they want to buy one. There's really nothing that says that we can't say no, even though common sense, in my opinion, says, well, why do they need one? If Franklin has one and they're our first mutual aid to Clark's Chapel, you do we want to see the taxpayer? So I think it's good for the county just to at least have a little bit of knowledge and say, okay, well, let's at least look at, before y'all make that expenditure of what we're going to do. I don't know, if y'all don't mind, I'll research this with Warren and come back with this board a recommendation at our next meeting. Go for that. So,
All right.
okay.
Thank
Is that okay with everybody?
Due to my lack of knowledge, can you define concurrence in a simple way for me to understand?
Basically, it was intended to say that we agree that the expenditure is legitimate and has a legitimate purpose. That was what the intended definition was. However, there's, we as in the Macon County Fire Marshal's office, and as such, the Macon County Board of Commissioners.
We concur with their decision.
We agree that your expenditure is what you need, and we agree that you can financially sustain it. However, that is the implied definition, because that's what I think it means.
Actually,
But
it's the
that may not
fire
be what
marshal,
he
not
thinks.
the commissioners, is the way the document reads presently. If the commissioners want to be involved in that decision making, then that agreement will need to be revised.
Lori, what's the definition of a capital expenditure?
For the county, fixed asset or capital is $5,000 or more.
5,000. All right, thank you, Warren.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you, Warren.
I'll get with you. Grab lunch. You can buy. All right, 11B, request by Mr. William F. Thomas for an exception to the Macon County Flood Ordinance. Planning, Permitting, and Development Director, Mr. Jack Morgan.
Good evening, Mr. Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. We have with us tonight Mr. and Mrs. Thomas, back here. They own property down off of Woodchuck Lane on 28 North. Pretty much, if you were standing at the old Oak Grove Baptist Church looking at the river, you'd be looking across their property below, between 28 and the river. Back in July, we have received a complaint that they had placed some fill in the floodplain, which is against our ordinance. And Mr. Joe Allen, who's my assistant and is real good help, thank you very much, went down there and investigated, and indeed they had. Well, it's our job to send them a notice of violation, which was sent on the 19th, advising them that they were in violation of the ordinance and to remove the fill. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas came in. They had no idea that we had a flood ordinance. They had no idea that they should have had a permit or a land disturbance permit. They had listened to the advice of their grading contractor, which was incorrect. And they were a little bit frightened by the whole idea. So we asked them why they did this. And you should have in your packet there, it looks something like this, an overhead photograph of their property. In front of their house, toward the river, is their driveway, and it's subject to severe flooding. And when it floods, there's no way out. Their attempt was, if you look right at the end of their parking area, they put a little ramp up to Highway 28 and gravelled it for an emergency exit in case of flooding. They'd park their car up there above the base flood elevation. Then when it flooded, they would get out. They said, that's our intent. We didn't intend to harm anybody. We didn't intend to break any laws, but here we have. So what do we do here? Well, we have a concession in our floodplain ordinance for exceptions to the requirements, and those exceptions cannot be granted by me. They have to be granted by this Board of Commissioners, and that's the reason we're here tonight, is for you gentlemen, to consider the merit of what they've done, to determine if it does comply with the exceptions, the requirements to be granted an exception, and then the decision's up to you gentlemen, whether you want to grant it or not. So I can begin anywhere else you want me to, or we can just get right into it.
Chester, just matter of formality. Because this is sort of a quasi judicial hearing, is this something that we need to advertise further and put on
No, I don't think
public? We
there's,
just handle it now?
I think we
I
could
mean,
get-
we're gonna have to hear testimony from both Jack, maybe Mr. Thomas.
I don't think there's any problem.
Presume we're gonna need to
proceeding.
swear them in. So when do we open that case? Do we do it now? Just need a little guidance.
I think if the board is inclined to proceed with the hearing this evening, then the board can certainly do that. I think it's a matter of, there's an application for an exception that I believe was filed by Mr. and Ms. Thomas, is that correct? I think it would be appropriate for Mr. Thomas to be, Mr. or Mrs. Thomas, or perhaps even both of them if they wanted to be sworn and just go through the application with this board, and the board could hear their application. The application, as I understand it, Jack, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it sets forth the matters which are required in order for the board to grant an exception. And you would need to hear under oath that the application meets those the criteria for an exception before you could grant it.
Basically granting a variance.
The key thing is everybody gets treated the same here in this ordinance. You know, we were gonna have a hearing 6 or 8 months ago on the thing out on Angel White Road, the farmer,
We resolved that without,
Wayne Moss,
yeah.
but it was appealed. I mean, was that case handled the same way that we're handling this?
He was appealing our decision, my decision, enforcing the floodplain ordinance, and we met with Mr. Moss out there, and he decided to take other actions.
He withdrew the appeal.
Yes, he withdrew.
Oh, we did withdraw it?
Yes.
But he never filed for an exception. Is that the difference in the two?
Yes, the exception is an exception to this. An appeal, it generally, and Mr. Jones, if I'm wrong, tell me, an appeal is usually that they don't believe that my decision is correct, the administrators.
But they're given the option of appealing or,
Depends on what they want to do. I don't think Mr. and Ms. Thomas have a sense that I have misinterpreted an ordinance. They would just like an exception to it.
And the ordinance specifies certain criteria which must be met in order for an exception to be considered. It's predetermined criteria. That's part of the ordinance.
Well, I don't have any problem hearing it, I presume.
No, that's,
The rest of y'all are good.
are they, y'all wanna do it tonight, or y'all?
All right. Well, Chester, if it's okay, I'm gonna, under your guidance, I'm
I
gonna.
think it'd be appropriate
swear
this
in.
time to probably first ask Mr. and/or Mrs. Thomas to come and address their application to the board under oath. And we would respectfully request Mr. Morgan to listen to that testimony intently. And once they have completed their presentation, I think it'd be appropriate for you to request that Mr. Morgan give his interpretation of the testimony and whether it fits the criteria required by the ordinance.
Okay. Mr. Ms. Thomas, we don't handle these every day, very often.
Understand, we don't either.
That's
for sure.
Years of
We've
service?
seen a few.
Yeah, I think this may be the second one I've seen since I've been a commissioner.
There's in here.
There's one right there.
All right, I'm gonna swear each of you. I'll go with Ms. Thomas first. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Is that correct?
I do.
Okay. Mr. Thomas, you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. Well, welcome. We'll proceed.
Thank you.
We'll hear your side of the story, and then we'll go forward.
Well, as Mr. Morgan mentioned, we didn't realize we were creating a problem when we started this. This began back in May after the last flood. We knew we had to come up with some other method for getting out of the property when it comes up, because
the current situation is all the water that runs down Woodchuck runs right down into our front yard, and so if the water comes out of the river, that all comes right into our front yard too. Well, that's the only way out of the property, so that's the very first thing that always floods. So we were trying to come up with a way to allow us to have an access that would not be subject to flooding like that, and we didn't think we were causing any problem. The fill dirt that we added was downstream from our house, so it means our house would flood before that would be affected. And we have no neighbors downstream. It's the North Carolina Green Belt.
Resource Commission.
Yeah, where the swinging bridge is and all that. It's a green belt area. There's nothing there. The closest house is way down the river and is quite a ways from the river. So we didn't think we were causing any kind of a problem. We didn't know we were. We asked our contractor if we needed a permit, and he said no. So we went ahead with the construction of the driveway, only to find out we did need something. So that's kind of how we got here. And to us, it's a safety factor because Mr. Beal's been out there, Mr. Morgan's been out there. They've seen the existing driveway. It's not really a very safe situation. So that was our thinking. Now, I can go through my answers to the questions on the appeal.
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Just take it from one right on down through the entire process. They need to hear each of those.
Well, what I saw as far as the application, the portion that talked about the appeal started with Article 4. So that's where I started my narrative here. As far as Article 4A, which is the first, there should be no danger to other persons or property from the construction of the driveway. As I mentioned, we have no residents downstream that should be affected by our construction, and we are next to the North Carolina Public Greenbelt land. Article 4B, the only danger to life and property from this development would be to us, if there were any. As I mentioned, it's on the other side of our house, so our house would flood first. Article 4C, the proposed driveway would in no way increase the possibility of flood damage to our property. As I mentioned, if it's going to flood, it's going to flood before it would ever affect that. The direction of the river flow would impact our house and garage without affecting anything else. No other properties would be in danger from the development. Article 4D, I just have this as not applicable. It doesn't, it talked about, I don't remember what, I don't have the other copy of the actual.
Thank you.
Thank you. 4D. Oh, the importance of the services provided by the proposed facility to the community. There should be none. It's on our property and we would be the only ones that would use it.
Personal
And
residence.
Yeah, and it should not have any effect on public transportation or safety or anything like that. 4E. Okay. The necessity of the facility of a waterfront location as defined under Article 2 of this ordinance as a functionally dependent facility where applicable. I don't see how that applies in this case, so I just put not applicable. The availability of alternative locations not subject to flooding or erosion damage for the appropriate use. There is none. We're in the floodplain. Let's see. There is no other location. The reason was to provide a safe access and egress from the property. In case of a flood, The only current access to the property is through the area that is the first to flood and is highly susceptible to flooding. This new structure would be much slower to flood and less likely to flood and would allow us time to safely leave the property. In addition, private vehicles could be parked on the driveway strategically so we could get out of there and quickly if needed. The other property access is through the shared roadway, which is also shared by 3 other houses upstream from us. So we're not affecting them in any way. Article 4G, the compatibility of the proposed use with existing and anticipated development. Can't imagine you guys are going to do any development. It is on our private property, so I don't think that one would be applicable. The proposed, the safety, let's see if I'm getting myself right here. The relationship of the proposed use to the comprehensive plan and floodplain management program for that area. I don't see where it would be a detriment to your floodplain management there. As I mentioned, there's not really anything that would be impacted by the current location. For, let's see, where am I? 4I. The safety of access to the property in times of flood for ordinary and emergency vehicles. This would actually be improved or increased. Cowie Fire Department serves our area and they come and check on properties every time there's a chance of a flood and so forth. They would have a much easier time to get access to the property in the event of a flood if they needed to do a rescue than they would with the current driveway. Let's see, where am I at here? 4J. The expected heights, velocity, duration, rate of rise, and sediment transport of the floodwaters and the effects of wave action if applicable expected at the site. I don't know anything about heights, velocity, duration, or anything like that, but I don't think it would be applicable because, again, I don't see where it would be affecting anything except us. Okay, 4K, cost of providing governmental services during and after flood conditions, including maintenance and repair. There would be no additional costs to Macon County or the government because of this development that I can see, because it's completely on our property and it would be our responsibility to maintain it. Let's see. 4K, the cost of providing government services during and after flood conditions, including maintenance or repair of public. I guess I did that one. All right. Article 5, a written report addressing each of the above factors. I believe you should have a copy of what I just mentioned. It says that you all may attach whatever conditions you deem appropriate to the granting of an exception, if you should choose to do so, which we hope you will. Number 7, any applicant to whom an exception is allowed shall be given written notice specifying the difference between the base flood elevation and the elevation to which the structure is to be built, and that such construction below the base flood elevation increases risk to life and property. Well, our house is already there, so the really difference there is not really applicable, I wouldn't say. We already have flood insurance. We know that we have to have flood insurance, and I don't see that this would impact our flood insurance in any way. Floodplain administrator shall maintain records. I'm sure Mr. Morgan will do that. And then conditions for exception is item 9. 9A, exceptions shall not be issued when the modification will make the structure in violation of other federal, state, or local laws. I don't believe it would. Can't imagine that it would. Number 9B, exceptions shall not be allowed with any designated floodway or non-encroachment area if the exception would result in any increase in flood levels during the base flood discharge. Again, I don't see that would, because it's beyond our house. It would affect us before it would affect that, and there's no one downstream that would be affected. Let's see. C. Exceptions shall only be issued upon a determination that the modification is the minimum necessary considering the flood hazard to afford relief. It pretty much is, I think. I don't know of any other solution that would allow us access or egress from the property that would not involve something similar to this. Alright, exceptions shall only be issued prior to development permit approval. Well, we kind of blew that one, but we did not know. 9E, exceptions shall only be issued upon showing of good and sufficient cause. I hope you feel that we are showing good and sufficient cause. Determination that failure to grant the exception would result in an unusual hardship to the owner of the property that was not caused in whole or in major part by the property owner. Well, I guess we caused the problem, but we're trying to solve the problem at the same time. And then a determination that the granting of an exception will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, extraordinary public expense, create nuisance, cause fraud, or on victimization of the public, or conflict with existing local laws or ordinances. Aside from what we're already talking about, I don't see any impacts from any of that. And I believe that's pretty much the end of it.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any questions from the board?
So this is an appeal hearing.
Yes.
No, it's not an appeal, it's a request for an exception.
Yes.
Yeah, request for an exception, yes. We've already appealed
You've appealed.
to Mr. Morgan.
Again, what he was asking for with his original request for an appeal is not an appeal from the decision administrator, but relief from the ordinance by way of an exception. I can't do the exception.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to what you've done. I think y'all be able to do whatever you want to on your private land. The purpose of a floodplain ordinance is, even though you've described you're not damaging anything, the only concerns about filling a floodplain, and I have a biology background, is that when you place dirt in it, it displaces that future flood water and forces it onto someone else. That's the concern. In other words, if you're going to fill 100 acres of floodland 6 foot deep, you've displaced future flood water, forcing it on someone else. You've narrowed the channel for drainage. But I'm not opposed to your thing, but I just want to make sure that we're being fair. I've been on this board 6 years, and this is the second issue of this. And if you disagree with the decisions that you've been given, I think for us to be to hear it as an appeal, I mean, we've duly sworn these people. Do we swear them for exceptions?
I'm not sure that I understand
I mean,
your question or.
I know the other floodplain thing with Mr. Moss we were prepared to do a hearing.
Correct.
And that was the appeal as described in the ordinance. But this is an exception, but we're treating it as,
We have to hear the evidence to determine whether or not the criteria specified by the ordinance has been met by the applicant for the exception. And from that standpoint, I think when Mr. and Ms. Thomas have rested, I think it'd be appropriate for the board to ask Jack Morgan to testify and to give his understanding of what the exception his understanding of whether or not that criteria has been met by Mr. and Ms. Thomas.
Any other questions, Mr. and Ms. Thomas, before I call Jack up?
Is the, just what I'm looking at here, is this a long-term or short-term solution?
And this would be a long-term solution.
It's long term, it's emergency exit, what is it?
Mhm.
But the banks and things that I'm looking at,
Well, we stopped before the driveway was completed because Mr. Allen came out and informed us that we had to stop, and so we did. So it's not completed
okay,
at this point.
what will completion look like?
Well, we will plant grass
Okay, banks,
on the banks to prevent erosion. There needs to be some more gravel put on the driveway to widen it out and things of that nature. It was a work in progress at the time it was stopped.
go back to Mr. Higdon's question or concern. What happens to the displaced water when it comes down? When you have a flood, you're protecting yourself, but where did it go?
Well, we're not actually protecting our own house, we're just providing a way off the property. Our house, the river flows this way, our house would sit here, and the driveway would sit here. So the water, if it was blocked by the driveway, would back up into our house, nothing else.
Mr.
And
Thomas?
this is the flood plain, this is not the flood.
Mr. Thomas, is there anyone else that can use this, or are you the only one?
We would be the only ones that would use it. It is
What
complete.
size property do you have there?
It's an acre and a third.
Did you build your house? or did you
No,
buy it?
sir, we
When
bought
did
it
you buy it? How long?
a little over 2 years ago, in June of 16.
Did it occur to you that you might be in an area that would be prone to flooding?
Yes, we knew that, but we didn't realize that it would be, as bad as it is in terms of, it's really the roadway that causes the problem. Because if the river rises, then the water has nowhere to go from the roadway. So it floods our front yard, even if the river doesn't necessarily come out of its banks. All it has to do is get up high enough that the water from the road has nowhere to go, and it
There's
goes.
literally a ditch. There's
Yes.
literally a ditch on the, I guess it's 40 foot from the house?
Yes.
50 foot from the house, that comes down to the river, and the river don't even have to get to the banks before that water backs up. It's just like you've got a water surge, it backs up into the ditch, and it closes their driveway off even if the water ain't even up to the bank.
That's correct,
And,
yes.
and that's not on your property.
No, it's not. That is not.
That's the
There,
real
there is a
problem.
picture that I had enclosed in the application, I assume you have it, that shows a picture of the flooding from May. And that picture was taken, the water was not above the bank. It was right up to it, but it was not over the bank. But the driveway in the front yard had about that much water in it.
And that's what makes this situation so unique. When I went down there, we done some measurements.
Yes,
to
we
see
did.
about the floodplain and where it was at, and tried to figure out,
Mm-hmm.
something, because, and what was so unique, the water don't even have to be the top of the bank, and they're stranded. And what my biggest point was for the emergency exit, not only for them, but for emergency personnel
Mm-hmm.
to get to that river, because that would be the only way for them to get, to maybe even get boats in the river to go down. We've talked to some of those other folks,
Mm-hmm.
and so it can enhance in several ways, and I don't really think because if that water got up to where you put the driveway, and your house is already flooded.
That's exactly right. Yes, we know that.
So this is not going to be your primary ingress and egress. This is just going to be an emergency exit.
Well, it will become primarily our primary ingress and egress because,
But the other two houses that's above you would continue to use the existing road, right?
yes, they have another exit down on the other end.
Okay.
And we're not affecting the,
So when the road floods, then they can turn and go.
they can go the other
So
way.
You don't have that.
We don't have that option.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Jack, you ready? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack, we'll swear you in.
Okay,
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Proceed. I know we got several questions for you, so.
Okay, you wanna start with the questions or?
Go ahead and proceed with your,
Okay.
unless you'd like us to ask questions first.
That's your prerogative there. I have a rough drawing of approximately what this looks like. I'd like to pass out to you gentlemen. And you get kind of a flavor of how much we're talking about. Hope I made enough if I didn't. Excuse my drawing skills, I forgot how to do drafting. But if you look, there's the natural grade as it was before they did anything is the bottom line there. And then the driveway slope is what they've added in. The, the floodway doesn't exist there. There's a non-encroachment area. And it stops right about the toe of that. So none of this is in the non-encroachment area. You gentlemen will not be allowed to allow an exception in that area anyway. So we don't have to worry about that. But it's approximately 92 feet up to Highway 28. And about 20 foot from the toe, it's 3 foot high. And on up at 40 feet, it's about 5.5 foot high. And I don't know, let me see.
Would that be 60 feet or would
92
that be?
up the top.
The measurements would be 40 feet from the toe.
It'd be 60 foot from the
60
top.
foot from the toe, so it's higher up next to 28.
Yeah, I guess it goes up high. Let me see, where's your submitted one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and that dash line on there is the, approximately the base flood elevation. So all of this fill they put in is not in the floodplain, just what is below that line would be what is in there. Now, in consideration of what evidence they provided, they were requested by the ordinance to provide those, answers to those, let's see how to put it, exceptions that may be issued. And section E4 where it says, passion upon the exceptions, the appeal board shall consider all technical evaluations, all relevant factors and standards specified, and the A through K that Mr. Thomas presented. And I don't know how you gentlemen felt about the response to that, but I think that they met the criteria to bring it to you gentlemen to be considered. Now, we have had other people in the past that have asked for exception, and I say, all right, fulfill this first obligation. Well, they can't answer these questions that you gentlemen could support, or that I could support. But I feel like the Thomases have done that. Their situation is unique. It's, of course, they bought the property knowing it would flood. I mean, it's right beside the river. It's a beautiful little piece of property, but the safety of the Thomases getting out of there is more of a concern to me than the amount of fill dirt they placed in there in this case. They've, let's see, Mr. Egan, you got a pretty quick brain on these figures. We got approximately 60 foot, well, let's figure half of that. So it's about 7 foot high up the top to nothing, 7 foot high, 92 feet, and it's 9 foot wide of gravel, 20 foot to toe. So about 1,500 cubic feet of dirt in the floodplain, approximately. Cubic yards is what I figured, roughly. So it's not a substantial amount, but it's not a wheelbarrow load either. It's some. But the conditions for the exception on down at number 9 of that section, the exception shall not be issued with the modification when the modification will make the structure in violation of other federal, state, or local laws, regulations, or ordinance. It does not, that I'm aware of. There's no federal laws that affect his property other than the floodplain ordinance, which we're considering an exception of now. No state laws, no local laws, no other regulations other than the floodplain ordinance that I'm aware of. Mr. Jones, are you aware of anything else? B, exceptions shall not be allowed within the designated floodway, which is, or non-encroachment area, which it's not. C, exceptions shall only be issued upon the determination that the modification is a minimum necessary considering the flood hazard to afford relief for the Thomases, of course, since that's the only people that it affects. I don't know of any other option actually they have to try to get out of their safety, because there is a photograph that Mr. Thomas provided. I hope you have it. No, that's Joe's. Excuse me just a second here while I get it out of there. It's back toward the back. This one. This was in May. Y'all remember a flood in May?
Is that? I didn't get that. Yeah, that was in the agenda package.
It's in there somewhere, Paul.
Pardon?
First picture.
Oh, I'm going
It
to
was
the
separate,
PDF.
it was a separate attachment. There were
Oh.
separate attachments.
Separate attachment, okay, I just went to the PDF file on.
Yeah, you had there were three attachments of, yeah, the application and then some
Yeah, that is, I
photographs.
don't even know, that's a bunch of water and a fence and a couple of trees.
Well, what that is that's his driveway gate with May flood, and you see that in the background the river's pretty close to the top of the banks, but it's not out. But it's already cut their exit off already. So this is what they're trying to avoid. They wake up in the morning and they're trapped and they can't get the car out, and you run up Woodchuck Lane and it just gets deeper for a little ways till you get up to the next house. So I think they've attempted the minimum they could for relief. D, the exceptions shall only be issued prior to development permit approval. We've not approved a permit because they didn't submit one before they did the work, so that's up to you gentlemen to consider that. We've not issued a permit for this yet.
Read that again.
It says exceptions shall only be issued prior to the development permit approval. We cannot approve this permit application without your permission. The way I see that, Mr. Jones, maybe I'm incorrect. Okay. Paragraph E, exceptions shall only be issued upon showing good and sufficient cause, as Mr. Thomas argued. Determination that failure to grant the exception would result in unusual hardship. That's up for you to determine by Mr. Thomas's argument. Number 3, a determination that by granting the exception will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, extraordinary public expense, create nuisance, cause fraud or victimization of the public, or conflict with existing laws or ordinances. And again, that's up for you gentlemen to consider Mr. Thomas's argument.
Over the years, we've heard different versions of this, Jack, as you well know. This is not one for monetary gain. This is not one, we've heard it for trailer park, we've heard it for a lot of different things. This is strictly for the safety of citizens of our community. And if you saw when we went down, they went down more than once. And trying to figure out some type of solution, because it is a safety issue. When you see the flood, the driveway flooded, and the river not even out of the banks, that's what is the real problem here. And it is a safety issue, but it's also a safety issue for the emergency vehicles if they should have to get down in there for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so, if Mr. Morgan's in agreement, I would certainly support the argument that this should be granted as a variance and an exception to the floodplain. There's not enough dirt there to really matter to a whole lot. I mean, 50 cubic yards when you're comparing, when you're filling something, especially in this location. I just don't see where it would, if you're gonna harm anybody, it's gonna harm them, so.
I have and if I may, Mr. Bill, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, that's fine, go ahead.
I have another drawing here. What I would recommend is the ordinance allows some conditions to be placed on the exception.
What record, this contractor told me they didn't need to do this.
I'm beg pardon.
Didn't need a permit.
That's a separate subject right there.
Pardon?
That's a separate subject to this, but yes, there is a problem there.
Have a great license.
Yeah.
And I apologize, I was not prepared for an appeal hearing tonight or an exception. We've had one, like I say, in 6 years that I've been on here, so I'm for letting you use your driveway and getting in and out of there. I'd like to see this floodplain ordinance thrown out. But we have to make sure that everybody that comes is treated equally. And,
Okay. What I would recommend is, if those little 3 circles, pitiful looking circles of mine, we put some culverts in under that to allow the water to balance on either side of that embankment.
What size?
Nothing less than 18 inches. I would recommend probably if you look, probably 18 inches is the best you could do right there above the 3 foot mark. You might get on up to 36 on up there. That would help with some of the displacement of soil as well.
that help the flow, but not necessarily displacement.
Well, culvert's hollow.
Whatever the volume of the
Culverts, you take that out.
culvert is the only amount that you're deducting.
Yes, that would be
This is what we done across the road up on Walnut Creek.
Yeah, that was
Same-
before we had,
Same principle.
that was before we had this ordinance exactly
Big,
like
but
this.
big tract of land.
Yes. Now your questions, I
So
suppose.
this would just be a modification that you're recommending
Yeah.
that they follow.
One of the conditions to allow the exception. If you don't allow the exception, he has to take all that out. That's what the ordinance says. And this,
Is in agreement with the modification.
I discussed that with Mr. Thomas, but that's up to y'all to set the, conditions.
Those culverts are not, the volume of that culvert, you're talking about what, 20-foot culvert?
Yeah, it'd have to be 20 foot long.
Yeah. Yeah, if it was, if this thing was stopping flow of water downstream, the culvert's a great idea. But it sounds to me like it's just more or less you're concerned about the displacement.
It is in hydraulic pressure on this field here.
But once it's
This is
established-
static water pretty much.
Yeah. Once it's established over the ground cover, it's not gonna be much
No.
pressure on it, downslope pressure.
No.
I mean, I didn't even know about this until I got the agenda packet. I'd like to run down and look at it. I'm not saying don't use that thing, but to sit here tonight not being fully prepared, I've not reviewed the floodplain ordinance. I feel inadequate tonight, and I apologize. I don't like that feeling. Kind of live with it, though. If y'all wanna make a decision on it, that's fine with me, but I'd like to, who on the board has seen the actual property?
I have. As liaison to the department.
Joe seen, you can ask Joe questions if you want to. He's seen what I've seen.
The people in charge of it,
Yeah.
they're recommending the variance with these recommendations.
This is a thing to me, and this is just Jack speaking, administrator. This flood ordinance is for the protection of people more than it is property, I feel. And if this is not a way to help protect someone, to help them to get out of there, if they gotta get out of there, I don't know what else we could do. This, usually Cowie's got a boat, they used to have to get out these people. If the Thompsons have their car up here above the base flood elevation, they've got to wade knee-deep water for a few feet and they're out. Otherwise, they gotta go through the deep part, because right there where 28 drops off, it just drops off like falling off this, podium. Pretty much straight off, there's no access there. So,
I don't see the value of adding culverts. I mean, that may help flow some, but it's not gonna, you're not gonna gain that much displaced equivalency from the volume of those culverts. And all three culverts are below the floodplain level, right?
Yeah, there'd be no point of them above it.
Yeah. I don't see any value in installing those culverts unless they were massive, and that would be astronomically expensive.
Jack?
Would
Well, that's just-
culverts allow the embankment that I'm looking at more durable or safe, or if the water going through it would take some pressure off?
You're probably gonna weaken it by digging a ditch all the way across that thing and trying to pack it back. You know, if it's compacted good, I don't know the construction standards on the driveway, but
It wasn't completed like you said, and it wasn't fully
we built
compacted.
to some sort of road construction standard.
It's cracked already.
What was you just, what was that?
It's cracked. The fill dirt wasn't fully compacted, and it's cracked, so it's got to be compacted some at best, what he's got.
Just hope it's there on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's not compacted enough, Mr. Higdon, no.
I mean, if y'all wanna rule on it, let's rule, but I mean, I like to just run down there and look at it. I mean, I'm not opposed to y'all. You got it in there, you can use it, you're using it now, right? You haven't been ordered off of it or anything. Okay.
No, we can't do that.
Jack, one question, and I'm not second guessing your design, but, I understand what your thoughts are with the pipe. Should there be any riprap or some sort of stone on the toe of that to provide any protection to that? Do you have any concern?
No, I wouldn't. The purpose of the culvert's not primarily for stormwater flow, where you would need to slow it down, which is what the riprap would do. And they get a good stable vegetation on the bank. That's as good as protection as you can get, in my opinion.
Right. The only thing I would add, Mr. Chairman, is, as with some other members on this board being involved in the planning board, we work very hard when we're working on these ordinances to do what needs to be done without encroaching on people's right to do what they want to do with the property. And this, obviously, there's some things set forth in it so that when the exception needs to take place, there's some criteria that has to be met. So to me, while I wasn't involved in the ordinance, it obviously some group worked on it, and they were able to develop an ordinance that serves the purpose to protect the citizens, and it provides an avenue to be able to work around when we need to work around for the right reasons. So, it seems like the process that's been put in place is working, and it's, this is just proof that it's doing what it's supposed to do.
All right, here's what I'm struggling with this is the fact that we're, in my opinion, is that we're somewhat setting a precedence for future dealings in Macon County. So next week or next month, we're gonna have another one. Someone says, well, we just gave them, they did it, didn't ask permission, they didn't get a permit, they put it in. So I wanna do that now, y'all did it for them, you're gonna do it for me too. Now, I understand their reasonings behind it, but at the same time,
But at the same
makes
time,
bad
it's
taste in
pretty
my mouth,
strict
so.
criteria they'd have to meet to do that.
I agree.
I mean, it's
I
not the
agree.
first rodeo we
That's
went
why
to.
I'm struggling with it, so.
Now, that's a great point, but that same criteria had to be met before this, but we have.
That's right.
We set the precedent.
It'd be sort of a no-brainer if this had come in under the appropriate channels without it being completed prior.
So that, Mr. Chairman, is liaison to the department. I would, under the evidence presented and under the direction of the department head of Mr. Morgan and his recommendation, I make a motion that we grant the variance under floodplain ordinance, and, with the improvements as shown by Mr. Morgan, that's his job and Mr. Allen's job. And I put that in the form of a motion and grant the Thomases the ordinance for safety purposes.
All right,
Give
we
them
have a
emergency
motion on the floor.
Does that include your motion, include those?
That's right.
I second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion?
You're requiring the culverts as part of your motion?
That's what the department head's recommending, so I'm not gonna go against his recommendation. 'Cause that's their job.
Y'all good with the culvert?
And like he said, the road probably needs compacting anyway.
Yes.
They'll make them compact.
But it really goes back to another ordinance that we're gonna have to deal with in December.
No.
License. Ordinance.
Any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Opposed? Aye, aye. 3-0.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. Does anybody need a break before we continue? Tammy's like, let's go.
Let's go.
Item C, Macon County Public Health Billing and Collection Policies and Fee Schedules. Welcome.
Y'all don't
Welcome,
want a
Jim.
break? Thank you very much. Good evening.
Fine, said Gary.
So I've got 2 items on the agenda this evening, and I'm going to need them voted on separately. The first one I'll talk about is some changes to our billing guide, and I think you guys might have been sent the entire billing guide. So I'm going to draw your attention to page 9, which is the only page that has changes on it.
All right, I'm there.
Okay, got it?
Ordinance that
There you
come to, public health, billing and collection.
What's the header?
The top of the page is Women, Infants, and Children's Nutrition Program for WIC. Okay. All right.
You're wiping out be a resident of Macon County?
Yes, we are taking out what's in red there, being a resident of Macon County, and that's because WIC is a federal program and we cannot put those parameters on it. You can go to any county in North Carolina and apply for WIC. So we have to take that out for the requirement to be a resident of Macon County. Then if you'll look down, the next 2, the Children's Dental Program and the Adult Dental Program, it's the exact same change that we have had in the billing guide, that you had to be a resident of Macon County to receive services from those 2 programs. We are adding an exception to that, that you can also be served by participating managed care organizations, so that's your insurance companies. If we are enrolled as a provider in an insurance company, an MCO, we have to see any referrals or patients that are sent to us. We will continue to make residents of Macon County a priority and give preference to those patients, but if we have a resident of a surrounding county or even Georgia that has insurance and we're an enrolled provider, we will have to be able to see that, work that person into the schedule. So those are the changes with those. So I ask that you accept those changes. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to ask and answer anything
I'm
further.
sorry, I can't report. I had to leave the last health board meeting early, but did the health board approve this?
They did.
Okay. Good. Can we get a motion to approve the changes? We got a motion? Get a second? Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that all you did?
Okay, the second thing I have is some changes to our fee schedule. So I think you should have a copy of that. Okay, so the first 4 fees on there are brand new services and fees. These are lab services that we're getting orders from outside physicians for folks to come there to get lab service. So these, that's the reason that we're adding these services and the fees associated with those. The next 4 are flu vaccine, and those are based on the change in what our cost of the vaccine is. So we'll be going up on our flu vaccine this year based on the cost. And then the last one, the $79 one, is also a new fee, and that is a minor surgical procedure. It's like removal of warts or moles, those kind of things that we're having a need for in the clinic and are asking to add that
Get a
service.
motion to approve the fee changes. A motion to approve and a second by Commissioner Shields. All in favor?
I like somebody just pronounce the word.
There's some doozies in there. We're chuckling
Yeah,
about.
don't ask me to do that. Thank you.
No spelling test, Tammy. All right, Jim. We know that we received your notice of retirement, and so this, I guess, might be your last official meeting in front of us. But would you be willing to come back if we recognize you at our October meeting? Or would you like to us to publicly stand up and embarrass you now? Okay, I'd like for you to come back. That way we can be a little bit more prepared for it, and if that's okay. Yeah, for your time with us.
What
So,
date is that
thank you.
October meeting? Does anybody have that right there, Sandy?
No.
October 9th?
Yeah. Is that good with you, Jim? Mr. Manager, if you'll make sure that's on there.
Sure will.
All right, Jim, thank you. All right, thank y'all. Thanks for hanging out with us. All right, well, item 11E, discussion and consideration of a resolution of support for, oh, sorry, I missed one. 11D, just kidding, Sheriff. Discussion of grant award for purchase of in-car cameras and body cameras for the Macon County Sheriff's
If I
Department.
smell like cheeseburgers and grilled
Hey, you've been
sandwiches,
serving tonight.
I've been
That's
at
right.
Motor Grill working. I ran back over here to take a break to be able to come speak to you. I won't be long. Don't know if anybody will have any questions. I kind of hope not, because I'm not asking for anything. I got some good news. As all of you know, over the last several years, we've been talking about in-car cameras and trying to find the funds to be able to put in-car cameras into our vehicles because of the fact that the old cameras are dilapidated and no good. Company's been bought over 4 different times. And so basically we have no in-car cameras, maybe a couple of them. And so about a year ago, I reached out to Kevin Corbin and asked him for some help. Told him we were in the process of going after some grant funds, and he agreed to look at some ways to find some money. And so I'm here tonight to tell you that you all should have received, I think, the notification that we've been awarded $65,000, which sounds like a whole lot. To me, that's a whole lot of money. But when it comes to buying these cameras, it's really not a whole lot of money. But there's some avenues of grants that we're reaching out. It was supposed to be due in September. They've moved it, so now it's in October. So we'll be applying for those as well. We've been working really closely over the last couple of years with our IT department here in Macon County. And if it would have been my way, we would have probably messed up, to be honest with you. And the reason for that is because there's grants out there to where you can actually get such as body cameras, but you have to contract with them their system where you've downloaded this into. And then once you go out of being in a contract with them, then they have your evidence. And in talking with the IT guys, it's not a good idea for our evidence to be somewhere else that we don't have control over, because that's our evidence. And if we stop being involved in a contract with a company, well, they still have our evidence, and we can't get it. And so we've looked at several different models. Back when we first started talking about this, body cameras wasn't a big item of discussion. It was mainly the in-car cameras that we were trying to get because you see so much more with the vehicles having in-car cameras. You see when the blue lights come on, you see when the brake lights, it reads all that information in the camera system when it's recording. And so I would like for each of you, if you get an opportunity to see Kevin Corbin, thank him. Him and Speaker of the House Tim Moore made possible us to get this money. I'm excited about getting it. And sometime in the future, we'll be coming back to you once we've finalized exactly how we're going to utilize those funds. The one thing that's guaranteed is it has to be used for either in-car cameras or body cameras, and that is our full intention.
What was the amount?
65,000.
Do we need a motion, Chester, on this, or
There's a
just
budget
accept it?
amendment that
Yeah,
needs
okay.
to be approved
Okay.
for 65,000 to appropriate
Okay.
the North Carolina grant and aid, and then,
It's included in the,
yeah, it's included in your
We can-
packet, yeah.
We also know there's some 50-50 grants that
To accept the grant,
do what?
I guess you need,
We haven't taken a motion on it yet. but
Sorry,
we will.
I'll shut up.
No. We get a motion to approve it.
so moved, Mr. Chairman.
You get a second? You get a motion and a second by Commissioner Shields. All in favor?
So is that to accept the grant and approve the budget amendment?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I will tell you that we've tried out a couple of different systems. We've got about 4 officers right now that are utilizing them just for a temporary for a couple of weeks, and we're working with the company just to be able to see how they work. And my officers are very excited about the possibility. Haven't spoken with one of my officers that are against body cameras. Of course, they've all want in-car cameras. So we'll be coming back at a later date. We're just going to try to find some more money to be able to take care of that,
Thank you, sir.
as you all asked me to do.
Thank you.
I'm going back to serving food. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. All right. Item 11E, discussion and consideration of a resolution of support for Senate Bill 711, the North Carolina Farm Act of 2018. Commissioner Gillespie.
Chairman, I think all of you have Senate Bill 711 and this resolution. I asked Chester to check the resolution and make sure that he didn't see any issues with it, and to check the version of 711 that I sent to you, make sure it was the appropriate one, and he has done that. There's some, as always, there's some real challenges with our farm community right now, and this is one that's on the forefront, and it's these nuisance lawsuits that we're seeing, and this basically is just supporting the Senate Bill 711 that has been passed. It started with our pork producers, and it's real easy for us to sit here in the mountain and say that's a problem down east, but let me assure you it's not, because there's chickens in western North Carolina, there's cattle standing on my place, and it affects all of us. So I just ask you to consider this. It's the pork itself is 46,000 jobs roughly, and $11 billion a year to our economy. So I'm not going to read through all this. If anybody's got any specific questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those. I will, as a side note, the second lawsuit that found that rule not in the farm's favor. That particular farm this week, they shipped the hogs off of that farm, and there's not hogs being replaced on that farm. So, this thing can have a snowball effect, and Peeps is big business in North Carolina.
Third settlement was for what, $490 million? The
Yeah.
first two were for 4 or 5 million. The third case that was heard,
Yeah.
490 million.
Yeah, and
There's 20 cases pending.
luckily, there's some statutes in place that prohibit awards. It doesn't prohibit the jury from granting it, but it prohibits from having it.
That'll be challenged though.
But, you know, and this is my opinion, nobody else's opinion, but my opinion is at some point, Smithville Farms is gonna look at North Carolina and say, it's not worth it. You know, the exposure that we have is not worth it in North Carolina, and we're gonna move elsewhere. And I'm not implying that anyone has said that or anything, but common sense to you that at some point that's gonna happen. So with that in mind, I would make a motion that we pass this resolution.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Now, Bill's already
Just
passed
add this,
mine.
that the agriculture commissioner was in Franklin, and of course Carl was there, and we had a good meeting with him, and this was a big discussion down in Hickory, North Carolina. Believe me, and if they can do it to and the thing about it, if you don't know this, and I don't know if I'll know this or if Gary knows, what they done, this was a group of lawyers from out in Texas. They come, and they just chose, and these people moved in knowing they was all farm wire. And they're nuisance suits, and the same judges heard all three cases.
But the next one.
The next one is different. And we had a little conference call on that this week, so hopefully, and we're not the only county, but thank Carl for his leadership on this and his, but it's right, it could be something else besides that.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
One additional side note to that, November 1st, Lincoln Farm Bureau will have their annual meeting. It will be at Business Barn. And a lot of folks that have been in the trenches, if you will, in regards to this will be at that meeting. The executive director of Port Council will be there, executive director of North Carolina Cattlemen's Association will be there. The lieutenant governor will be there. So if you have time on your schedule, it might behoove you to come get some information.
Thank you, Earl. All right, consent agenda. Get a motion to approve unless there's something that someone would like to remove for discussion. Most of it was increases this time. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda? Maybe? Somebody? For discussion?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve. We get a second? Got a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, I don't think we have any appointments. We have had a request for a closed session, acquisition, regarding acquisition of property.
Real property?
And then we will be coming out, we're not expecting any action, correct?
No.
All right, we're gonna come out and we're going to recess until my anniversary, September 25th.
Roll out.
6:30 p.m.
But that will not be here, that will be